person?
No. You know, it's only what you have on the inside about who you know who you are. So my life is not dictated by outside perception. It's only dictated by the things that I choose.
Goldie Hawn has always been Hollywood's sunshine. Bright, funny, impossible not to love. But even America's Golden Girl has limits. At 79, she's finally pulling back the curtain on 7 actors who turned her dream career into a nightmare. Some were co-stars who soured the moment cameras stopped rolling. Others reduced her to the giggling blonde, when all she wanted was to be taken seriously. For decades, she kept silent. Now, the truth is spilling out. And one of these names nearly destroyed an entire film. Number 1, Sean Penn. When Goldie walked into a Malibu charity gala, she wasn't chasing headlines. She came with sincerity. She'd spent days crafting a heartfelt speech about mindfulness and mental health, topics that mattered to her deeply, far beyond career moves or promotion. This was her soul on display. But just a few tables away sat Sean Penn, restless, fidgeting, broadcasting his disdain. Guests remembered his theatrics, rolling his eyes, sighing, muttering under his breath. Another celebrity wellness sermon. Goldie pressed on, speaking with warmth and vulnerability. The applause was gentle, respectful. But before the clapping even died down, Penn leaned back in his chair and, loud enough for half the room to hear, scoffed, "She should stick to giggling." For Goldie, it wasn't just a cruel quip. It was a dismissal of her entire being. She smiled, raised her glass, and walked out with grace. But once in her car, she broke. Not from embarrassment, but from exhaustion. "My whole career," she confided later, "and I'm still reduced to giggles by men who don't even know what I stand for." That night, she drew a hard line. No interviews with Sean Penn, no photo ops, no Hollywood politeness. When asked about him years later, her response was clipped, almost rehearsed. "Not my energy." Penn, of course, never apologized. When pressed about his reputation for hostility, he brushed it off as passion. Many suspected Goldie was one of the misunderstood victims hidden in his deflection. But Goldie never wavered. To her, passion didn't have to come at the expense of kindness. And unlike Hollywood feuds that fizzle over time, this one calcified into silence. Every awards show, every dinner, she greeted Penn with a blank civility and walked away early. That Malibu night never left her. And Penn? He never cared to mend it. Their relationship today isn't a feud. It's a wound sealed shut. Number 2, Dustin Hoffman. On paper, they should have been allies. Both were outsiders who broke the Hollywood mold. Goldie, the bubbly blonde fighting tooth and nail to prove she was more than comedy fluff. Hoffman, the unconventional method actor who reshaped the idea of a leading man. You'd think their paths crossing would spark magic. Instead, it sparked humiliation. It happened during a screen test for a serious drama Goldie desperately wanted. She came prepared, her script marked, her performance focused and raw. This was her chance to show she could handle weight, not just laughter. But halfway through, Hoffman stopped her cold. "You're not connecting," he said flatly, cutting her mid-line. Then, turning to the producers with a smirk, he added, "She's still playing it like a sitcom." The chuckles that followed weren't supportive. They were daggers. Goldie finished the test with grace, but inside, she was gutted. She had fought her whole career to be seen as more than the giggling blonde. And in one humiliating moment, she felt stripped of her dignity. That night, she told her agent, "I won't beg to be taken seriously by men who already see me as a punchline." By morning, she dropped out of the project. Hoffman never apologized. To him, it was just process. But to Goldie, it was cruelty disguised as craft. Years later, she admitted in interviews, without naming him, that some men in Hollywood treated women like they were always being directed. That sting wasn't just losing the role. It was that for a split second, she almost believed him. But instead of chasing approval, Goldie doubled down on her own lane. She produced and starred in Private Benjamin, a comedy with teeth that earned her an Oscar nomination and proved she could lead on her own terms. She didn't need Hoffman's validation. She built her own empire. Still, she never forgot. Offers came to work with him again. She refused. Rumors swirled of a quirky dramedy reunion in the 90s. She passed without hesitation. For her, that door was closed forever. Number 3, Chevy Chase. On screen, their 1978 hit Foul Play looked like magic. Goldie and Chevy Chase lit up theaters with goofy charm and screwball chemistry. Audiences saw sparks. But behind the curtain, the set was chaos. Crew members later revealed Chevy's behavior was unbearable. Moody, hostile, undermining the director at every turn. He improvised lines to steal laughs, refused takes he didn't like, and threw entire scenes into chaos for his own amusement. His ego swelled the moment cameras stopped rolling. He barked at crew, sulked whenever Goldie got the bigger laugh, and demanded rewrites to make him look funnier. Goldie tried to keep spirits up. She cracked jokes, boosted morale, smoothed over tantrums, but even her patience wore thin. One stylist overheard her whisper, "He's not funny when the cameras stop. He's just cruel," and she wasn't exaggerating. Chevy mocked her lines, sneered at her flirt persona, and dismissed her as more image than talent, ignoring the fact that she'd been one of Hollywood's most bankable stars for nearly a decade. By the final weeks, the two were barely speaking. Chevy, dripping with smugness, allegedly told a producer, "She's lucky to be in my orbit." Crew members walked on eggshells, desperate just to finish the film without a meltdown. One lighting tech summed it up. He wasn't a genius. He was a bully with timing. Despite the movie's success, Goldie never entertained sequels or future collaborations. Behind the scenes, the damage was permanent. Studios begged her to reconsider Chevy Chase. They dangled sequels, money, even Oscar-bait projects. Her answer was always the same: not interested. No explanation. No elaboration. Just silence. And that silence thundered louder than any headline. Decades later, there are no nostalgic interviews of Goldie and Chevy laughing together, no cozy throwback photos, only distance, only silence. To her, Chevy Chase wasn't just a bad co-star, he was a line in the sand. He made her personal blacklist, and he never got off it. Chevy, in typical fashion, shrugged the whole thing off. In an interview, he even joked that Goldie always took herself too seriously. But those who were there knew better. To them, the tension on Foul Play wasn't an isolated clash. It was a warning sign of the arrogance and volatility that would later haunt his entire career. Goldie went on to be celebrated as Hollywood's golden light. Chevy's reputation? It only dimmed with time. Number 4. Warren Beatty. In the 1970s, Warren Beatty wasn't just a movie star. He was Hollywood's storm, charismatic, powerful, and scandalous. Goldie Hawn, by contrast, was the new sunshine, bright, funny, impossible to ignore. For a brief moment, their worlds collided. Goldie later admitted she had a moment with Beatty while filming Dollars in Germany. On Watch What Happens Live, she joked that he was so handsome she worried her eyes might burn just from looking at him. But behind the flirtation, something darker brewed. Beatty wasn't used to rejection. And when Goldie refused to become just another name in his long list of conquests, the charm soured. He began whispering doubts in private meetings, dismissing her as flaky or too lightweight for serious roles. And in Hollywood, Warren Beatty's whispers carried weight. Suddenly, scripts disappeared. Promised meetings evaporated. Goldie confided to a friend, "He doesn't handle rejection. He punishes it." When asked if she'd ever work with him again, her answer was sharp. "I don't mix business with power plays." The Cold War between them simmered for years. Even when they reunited for Shampoo in 1975, the tension was visible. Crew members whispered that their off-screen distance bled right into their performances. Decades later, at a glittering awards gala, Beatty tried to smooth things over with his trademark smile. Goldie, gracious but icy, gave him a smile back, the kind a reporter nearby described as a smile that could freeze hell, then turned and walked away. That was it. No reconciliation, no reunion. Just one of Hollywood's coldest silences. Number 5. Bill Murray. By the late 80s, Goldie had worked with the best of Hollywood's improvisers, Robin Williams, Steve Martin, Chevy Chase. She knew the difference between playful improv and outright sabotage. So when a studio pitched her a quirky comedy with Bill Murray attached, she was intrigued. On paper, it sounded like a perfect pairing. America's Sunshine meets comedy's wild card. The illusion shattered at the very first table read. Murray showed up nearly an hour late. No apology, no explanation, just a loud entrance, a joke at an assistant's expense, and a half-empty coffee cup slammed onto his script like it was a coaster. From the start, he refused to stay on script. Every line became his playground. He mugged, mocked, and derailed carefully written dialogue into half-serious skits. Writers who had sweated over every beat sat in stunned silence as their work unraveled in real time. Goldie tried to play along at first. She laughed, rolled with the chaos, but then came the line that changed everything. In the middle of a scene, Murray turned to her with a smirk and said, "Why don't you try acting like you've done drama before?" The room cracked up. At least the men did. To them, it was just Bill being Bill. But for Goldie, it was a knife hidden inside a joke. She didn't laugh. She simply closed her script, excused herself at the break, and walked out. No fireworks, no confrontation, just quiet finality. By morning, her team called the producers. She was out. No press release, no smear campaign, just a clean, decisive exit. "He thinks unpredictability is genius," she told one confidant. "I think it's exhausting." For Murray, it was business as usual. He already had a long trail of clashes. Lucy Liu, Harold Ramis, Richard Dreyfuss, all had stories of his volatility. Asked later about his reputation, he shrugged. "I'm difficult because I care." Goldie wasn't convinced. When asked years later why she turned down so many male-led comedies, her answer was telling. "I chose peace." Peace, to her, meant no more babysitting egos disguised as geniuses, no more smiling through disrespect. Murray wasn't just another clash. He was the breaking point. Number 6. Kirk Douglas. If there was one thing Goldie Hawn despised most in Hollywood, it wasn't rejection. It was dismissal. Criticism she could handle. But being treated like decoration, that cut the deepest. And in her eyes, no one embodied that more than Kirk Douglas. She respected his legacy. She understood what it meant to stand in rooms built by giants. But reverence isn't the same as admiration. And while she respected Douglas's career, she couldn't ignore how he treated her. At events, he'd greet her with exaggerated gallantry, hand kisses, lingering winks, and comments about her beauty. To outsiders, it looked charming, old Hollywood gallantry. To Goldie, it was suffocating. "He talks to me like I'm still the blonde in a bikini scene," she confided, "and I've won an Oscar." There was no blowout fight, no screaming, just death by 1,000 dismissals. On panels, he interrupted her mid-sentence. At introductions, others were called visionary. Goldie was introduced as the beautiful Miss Hawn. Goldie once put it in words that stopped people cold. You can be #1 on the call sheet and still feel like the decoration. Kirk Douglas never seemed to realize that's exactly how he treated her. In a late interview, when asked about younger actresses like Goldie, his praise was the kind that cut sharper than an insult. She's charming. She's pretty. And she makes people laugh. That's a gift to him. That was a compliment. To her, it was proof. The glass ceiling wasn't just about paychecks or roles. It was about perception. One producer remembered a telling moment. During a roundtable, Douglas cut Goldie off 3 times in under 5 minutes. Finally, she closed her folder, smiled, and stood. I've said what I need to say. Calm. Decisive. Final. Then she walked out. She never trashed his name publicly. That wasn't her style. But privately, she admitted Douglas left her unsettled. A relic, she once called him. A reminder of the Hollywood that never saw past my smile. Her relationship with his son, Michael Douglas, was the opposite. She praised him as respectful, generous, modern. The contrast was blinding. And so, while her feud with Kirk never exploded into headlines, it also never healed. There was no reunion, no warm photo ops, nothing. In her own words, some men don't deserve a second act in your memory. Behind the laughter and sunshine, Goldie carried iron, a will forged in decades of being minimized, mocked, underestimated. She remembered every smile with an eye roll behind it, every joke that was really a jab, every moment she was dismissed before she even spoke. And memory, not bitterness, became her revenge. 7. Bette Midler. To Goldie Hawn, acting wasn't just about the lines. It was rhythm, timing, chemistry, the invisible music that made a scene sing. Goldie was finesse, wit, warmth, that golden glow. Bette Midler was a hurricane. Blunt force, big energy, impossible to ignore. Where Goldie played with subtlety, Bette bulldozed straight through. So when they were cast together in The First Wives Club, alongside Diane Keaton, Hollywood thought it was a dream. 3 icons, 3 powerhouses, one story about women reclaiming their lives. On screen, it was magic. Off-screen, sparks flew. At first, it was little things. Whose joke landed harder? Whose close-up got priority? Who had a paycheck with 1 extra zero? These weren't petty jealousies. They were battles of stature. Both women were used to being the star. Suddenly, they had to share the light. One insider swore they heard Goldie mutter after a table read, "She bulldozes through every scene." Comedy isn't just volume, it's timing. Betty didn't hold back either. In an interview years later, she laughed. Put 3 strong women in a room. You're not going to get tea parties. You get sparks, rumors spread, arguments over lines, Goldie pushing for rewrites, Bette fighting back. Even pay became a war, with executives forced to renegotiate after one actress found out she was earning less than the other. But here's the thing. The work never suffered. The film rolled, the laughs were real, and The First Wives Club became iconic. Still, those who were there remembered the silences between takes, the side glances, the one-upmanship that didn't vanish when the director yelled cut years later. Both women dismissed the rumors with practiced smiles. They reunited for projects, cracked jokes, posed for cameras. But insiders say the coolness never really disappeared. Goldie once confided, "She's brilliant, but she leaves no oxygen for anyone else." It's like trying to sing harmony with someone who only shouts. Betty's response? Classic Midler. Goldie's Goldie, sunshine, giggles, sparkle. I respect her, but we're not exactly picking out wallpaper together. It was never a full-blown war, more like a cold front that drifted in whenever their names were mentioned together. Respect? Yes. Warmth? Sometimes. Friendship? Not quite. Because if Goldie was sunlight and Betty was the storm, their time together proved one thing: even the brightest skies can crackle when thunder rolls in. At the end of the day, Goldie Hawn's dazzling smile may have lit up Hollywood, but behind the curtain, she fought her share of battles. From bruised egos to quiet betrayals, these 7 clashes with some of Hollywood's biggest names left a mark fans are still whispering about. But what do you think? Were these feuds just the price of stardom? Or do they reveal the darker side of Hollywood most never see? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more untold stories.